Namaste, Jai Bharat. Evolution is a theory that one gets familiar right in the school days, until, of course, it's a kind of madrasa setup of education. And when we talk about evolution, and what we learn in schools is biological evolution, primarily of Charles Darwin, though Kerensky, etc., are not referred at that point in time, which is not required. But so everyone has got a basic understanding of the biological evolution of Charles Darwin. To what extent it's absolute is something which one has to understand slowly, given in his own time. But the theory has its own validity. So that's about biological evolution. But evolution is not just confined to biological evolution. Evolution is something that happens to societies. And the societies, evolution in societies, is not that visible until one is close observant, until one closely observes it. And people developed a concept of a study of society, and they call it the social sciences, which is has to be taken with a pinch of salt, which is rather spurious, I would say, because someone with an understanding, or someone who's a Puritan with an understanding of science wouldn't be able to call a study or things concerning society as science, because science is supposed to be based on causal relation, causality, causation, or cause-effect relations. Such things you won't find in society. And Peter Winch has written long back that book, Idea of Social Sciences. And he, of course, comes very close to my perception that you just can't make science out of social knowledge. And why at all? The question, of course, it should be pertinent. Why at all should we go into making a science out of society? This is a disease. Trying to make a science out of everything, because you already make a postulate that science is the fundamental of everything, and whatever is not science is no knowledge. This postulate is as dangerous as the saying that the stage in society's growth. There's a stage before this kind of scientific euphoria emerges in Europe, particularly. That stage was religious stage. If you go to the history, I'm concerning with Europe because all these dramas take place in European history and European knowledge tradition, not in stronger and more developed knowledge traditions such as Bharatiya knowledge tradition, but then about which no one is really aware of, because we are not popularized. We don't give such kind of popularity, and it's not that easily swallowable like pills or capsules. They're not capsulated. So the point is, everything has to be science in order to get accepted. Such thought is a juxtapositional result from the point that everything used to be religion once upon a time. And it's that period precisely which the European historians themselves call as dark period in history, which roughly run towards 2000 years, not a matter of joke. From the Greek civilisational cessation to the coming of Protestant movement against papacy. The papacy is the period of dark period in history. So, see, the extreme characters of anyone, whosoever it is, that we find in Europe is that either you be totally religious, everything is controlled, based, or covered, or produced through religious frame. It goes completely against religious frame to form a scientific frame. So the concept of science in the 19th century Europe is something that is against, opposing, or nullifying religion. So scientific rather used to get treated as equal to, opposed to religion. If you look at that period of time, most scientists were not believers. They were so-called atheists. Now this concept of atheism itself is highly reductionistic. they were atheists. They were not believing religion. So that time everything has to be science. You see the people like Auguste Comte, who wanted to make social knowledge social physics. He wanted to apply the methods of physics, rather science, to society, to understand society. These are all very ambitious and very narrow and very, very reductionistic kind of approach. Going against religion doesn't make one scientific. And therefore, those days scientists were necessarily atheists. It's only much later that reason and faith and religion all could coexist in a very lucid and unintelligible manner. So, scientific thing has become an obsession, and by 19th century Europe had this trouble of scientific euphoria. So the point was, there is evolution. Society also evolves. There is social evolution, and society gets evolved into something better, which is neither on the basis of science nor on the basis of faith system of religion, whatever. But then if you look at the world stories of religion, Will Durant has written about it, if I am not wrong. He wrote about the history of civilizations. The civilizations evolve. And who become the greatest destroyers of civilization subsequently? Religions. Whichever religions it may be, but religions did destroy. Religion per se, and here I would make a distinction between religion and dharma. Dharma is what we find in Bharat. Religion is what we find outside Bharat. No time to explain, no need to explain. Religions were the great destroyers of civilization. If you look at the world civilizations, great civilizations were destroyed by religious movements and religious authorities, and they took people back in time. See, in many cases, religion works like a time machine. They have destroyed. Now, that religiosity, let me call it as religiosity, that religiosity of irrational faith and all kinds of ambitious hopes after death is not left us. Rather, in some corners, they are becoming strengthened. There are very apparently sensible people falling into this and going to do atrocious things as if these are the right things to do. Now, nations started emerging, nations started coming, nations started existing in that manner, which, of course, is a threat to mankind. Precisely these things are happening in the world these days. Precisely these things are happening in the world these days. I don't know what's going to be next tomorrow, but one has to be cautious. We shall meet again with some other thought. Namaste, Jai Bharat, Jai Sri Ram.